Hi everyone, I'm Dana and welcome back to Inverter Always. In today's video, we're going to be wrapping up the VRV tips and tricks series. I'm going to show you how to program the addresses and field settings for Daikin's three more common controllers, at least in the North American market: the Daikin Nav Controller, Navigation Remote Controller. I just call it the Nav Controller for short. The Daikin One Smart Thermostat, one of the newer Wi-Fi built-in controllers that we have here in the States. I'm not sure if it's available yet worldwide. And then, of course, the Daikin Madoka Controller, which is available globally. It's been out kind of for a couple years now. We're going to go through all three of those controllers in today's video. And the goal of today's video is to really just help you guys streamline the programming process. Once you have the system up and running, you've passed the test operation, and now you have to go around to every single one of your remote controllers. What is, some of the best ways to get in, program all of those settings, get out, and move on to the next thermostat so we can complete the project. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please click the like button below. It really helps out my channel. And if you guys have not already, and you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. All right, you guys, let's jump right in. Now, you guys, as a quick disclaimer, it's very important that you guys are always referring to the installation instructions that get shipped with each piece of equipment. The goal of today's video is not to show you what settings to be programming into the thermostats, but more the goal of today's video is to show you how to get in and what the process should look like to make it go as quick as possible and as smooth as possible on your startup. We want to go from thermostat to thermostat to thermostat very quickly and efficiently to get the job done as quickly as possible. And so again, please don't focus on the settings that I choose in today's video and then go and put those out on all of your jobs, because your settings may vary, your equipment may vary. Every single indoor unit style does have different settings to choose from. So again, I stress, you need to make sure to always refer to the installation instructions that get shipped with your equipment before you go in and start making these changes. I actually did a whole series on all three of these controllers. So as we're going through the video today, I will put links up in the corner of the screen that will give you guys the ability to go check out these controllers in more detail. How to use the controllers, how to install the controllers, how to fully commission each of these controllers. Again, that is not the focus of today's video. Now, you guys, the first controller we're going to look at is the Daikin Nav Controller, Navigation Remote Controller, if you want the full name. I just call it the Nav Controller for short. I have disabled the backlight for today's video because the backlight will wash out the picture and it will look terrible. I think this is probably going to be the best way to do it, but just so you guys know, the first button you press does illuminate the backlight. The backlight does need to be on before you press any buttons. So as I'm going through here, just make sure as you're going through yours, the backlight of your Nav Controller is on. Also, something else to keep in mind, I'm going to put a link to the playlist for the Nav Controller series up now so you can check that out. I'm not going to be going through and explaining in a ton of detail why this and why that and what this means and what that means, because again, the process is I just want to show you how to get in and make the setting changes. And then once we do all of that, maybe I'll explain things just a little bit when we get done, depending on how much time we have. So first thing we need to do is we need to get into the service settings menu by pressing and holding the cancel button. And as we've discussed many times in the past, you need to make sure that you are going from documentation to your controller and do not arbitrarily just change any of these settings in here willy-nilly, because they may not mean what you think they mean. And getting into this menu section can really screw up the way the system behaves. Will mess up the comfort level of the space. So please, unless you are a trained professional, following the installation instructions of the piece of equipment that you are making setting changes to, do not make any of these setting changes. Now, group address is the first thing we're going to select. If the group address does not show up on your thermostat, it's because you do not have a service checker connected or a central controller. You need to have one of those things connected in order for group address to pop up. When you select group address, you have two options: group address group, or group address unit. And 99% of the time you want to select group address group. The reason basically is you are giving a group address to everything connected to this thermostat, whether there's 1 indoor, 2 indoors, 10 indoors. You're going to be controlling everything as one group anyways, because that's how the thermostat works, gives everybody the same command. And so why waste a bunch of group addresses and icons on the central controller when they're all going to get the same exact command anyways. So group, and that's just the basic explanation to not waste a ton of time. By default, when you come in here, it's going to say 1-00, and at the top of the screen it says release. And you can basically pick any address that you want in any order that you want, from 100 all the way to 115, and then it goes to 200, goes up to 215, then it goes to 300, goes up to 315, and then goes to 400 and up to 415, and then we're done. You have a total of 64 group addresses on one D3 network, so one communication network that you can choose from. And again, it's really awesome. You can pick whatever address you want. So because I can pick any address I want, I try to match my group address with my room number or my unit mark. So very oftentimes I'll have something like an FCU 101. Well, in that case, I would group address that particular unit as group address 1-01. At my house, on the wall mount that this is currently wired up to across the house into the garage, that is FCU3. So I'm going to give it group address 1-03. Regardless of the address that you pick, all you need to do is hit the OK button once you've selected it, and you'll see at the top of the screen, it now says set. Once it's set, it has set. Now I can't change it. It's set. Think of that as saved. If you accidentally hit the OK button on the wrong address, hit the OK button again, and it will release that address and allow you to go in and change it. I want 1-03 because this is connected to FCU3 at my house. Once we're done, hit cancel 2 times, go back to service settings. Next, we're going to go down to do Unit Airnet address. Now, the Unit Airnet address is like a unique identifier for every single piece of equipment, kind of like a serial number, if you will, but a very much shorthanded version of a serial number. Every single piece of equipment needs one of these addresses. When you're doing your performance testing with Service Checker, you want to be able to see which unit is which. Because again, if I have 4 inverter units on one Nav Controller, they're all going to have the same group address, which means they're all going to be commanded as one group, same temperature, same mode, same on-off, same fan speed commands, etc., etc. However, if there's an issue with one of those units, I need to be able to identify which one has the issue, and that's where the AirNet address comes into play. Also, if you're doing anything called DNet monitoring or trending any of the performance data with an ITM through the AirNet engineering tool, you need these AirNet addresses to be programmed anyways. So you're going to AirNet address every indoor unit uniquely. So in this particular case, when you go into indoor unit AirNet address, it's going to say unit number 0 on the left. This is a particular indoor unit connected to this particular thermostat. Now, if I only have one indoor unit on one thermostat, it will always be unit number 0. So at that point, you can go in, the default is going to be 001, and you can pick anything from 1 through 128 in any order that you want. However, I typically will skip 1 through 10, and I will use those for the outdoor unit AirNet addresses. You can technically duplicate, and there's a whole long explanation that goes along with it, but basically just to keep things as organized as possible, I personally skip 1 through 10, and I start at 11. So just like the earlier example, if I have FCU 101 and I group addressed it as 1-01, that would be AirNet 11. In my particular case here at home, I have FCU 3 out in the garage. I group addressed it as 1-03, so I'm going to AirNet it as 13. Once you select whatever AirNet you need, hit the OK button 1 time, and again, it will say set at the top, and when it's set, you can no longer change it. And same as before, if you accidentally set the wrong one, just hit the OK button. It will release it. It will allow you to change it to the correct one, then hit OK again, and it will say set at the top. Now we're going to go cancel back one screen, and we're going to go up to the field settings. Now, when you go into the field settings, it will always populate mode 20 by default. And in the top left corner of the screen, you'll see unit number 0 again. Field settings in mode 20, mode 21, 22, 23, all the way through like 28, depending on the indoor unit. Some will populate, some will not. These are individual unit field settings. So I have to set all the field settings on this screen for mode 20, whatever settings I need for this particular unit number 0. And then if I have multiple indoors, I would go up and I would change it from unit number 0 to unit number 1 to unit number 2. But you're going to notice here I only have one indoor unit. Therefore, unit number 0 always by default. If you have one indoor unit, great. Mode 20 works fantastic. Go through, change whatever setting that you need to change. And when you're all done changing the settings, press the OK button. Asks, do you want to save? Press OK on yes. Screen will refresh. Mode 20 will be highlighted, and then you can either escape or go to the next menu section. If for any reason you do not want to do this for unit number 0, unit number 1, unit number 2, unit number 3, because you have many indoor units, possibly up to a maximum of 16 on one thermostat, and you just want to send a command to all of them at once, then there are an alternate list of modes. So mode 20's alternate is mode 10, mode 21's alternate is mode 11, 22's alternate is 12, etc., etc. You guys can follow and get the point. So if I want to send a command just one time to everything connected to this thermostat, then I can go to mode 10 instead of mode 20. I can go through, pick whatever I want to change, and then hit the OK button. It asks, do I want to save? Hit OK on yes. It will send whatever I just changed to everything on this Nav controller. Now you're going to notice that right now everything has an asterisk, and that's because it can't currently display what every single indoor unit settings are all at once. And so this is like send command only. Anytime you go to mode 10, 11, 12, any of those modes, those are all going to be send command only to the whole group. And I usually don't use those modes unless maybe I have the occasional 4 indoor unit to 1 thermostat type of thing, and I don't want to change it from unit number 0 to unit number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 or whatever. If I only have 2 indoor units, which is more common, maybe a maximum of 3, then I myself will actually just stay in mode 20, change it to unit number 1, change it to unit number 2, because then I can verify that the settings took. I can see what they are on screen. It just, for me personally, I'm a little bit more picky about it, and I want to make sure everything took. So again, that's just my preference. Now, as far as defaults go, defaults are going to change depending on what unit you're connected to, what market you're in. So again, don't really pay attention to the specific settings that I'm changing in today's video. The whole point is to show you how to get in. But there are a couple that I will typically change. What you see on screen now is your more common default for mode 20. Again, not always. But your 2-0 setting, 2-01, 2-02, 2-03, that's where do you want to sense temperature typically. And I like to go to 2-03 pretty much every time because I want to sense temperature from my thermostat. I do this by default, and if there's a problem zone or if there's a particular thermostat that I think is in a bad location, then I will change it to 2-02 and sense from the return air thermistor. You just have to be really careful about this because not all indoor units have return air thermistors. So again, don't do as I do here. Go to the installation instructions for the unit you have installed and make sure you're changing the proper settings. 5- I will also change to 5-02. 5-02 is telling the central controller to use whatever we programmed in 2- as the thermistor for control. So 2-03, that's like your local control. And then 5-02 sends whatever you programmed at 2-03 to the front end for global control. What happens sometimes if you leave it at 5-01 is that's return air temperature, which means that the ITM is going to use the return air temperature for things like auto changeover when you program in the front end, when really the zone is using the Nav controller temperature 2-03 for control. So we want to make sure that those basically just match. So we're going to program those in. We're going to say, okay, awesome. Now my zone is programmed for mode 20. In the event that I have multiple indoor units on one thermostat, you also want to set 6-02 because that will tell the units to use the thermostat as a group controller. If you don't do this, then sometimes you can have some problems. Again, just trying to make it go as smooth as possible. Refer to the installation instructions shipped with your product. The other setting that I'll typically jump into is mode 22. And in mode 22, I will make sure that 2-02 is set. Now, each indoor unit will have a different default. Some will have 2-01, some will have 2-02. On VRV and SkyAir products specifically, should be careful there, that 2-02 and 2-01 are your thermo on-off dead bands. On mini split products that happen to have P1, P2 and allow the use of a Nav controller, this is not the same setting, so you cannot just go willy-nilly programming in mode 22, 2-02 to try to tighten up a dead band on just any system out there. Again, you need to go from the installation instructions of your unit to the controller. I cannot stress that enough. But 2-02 does tighten up SkyAir and VRV indoor unit thermal on-off deadbands from a 2 degree Fahrenheit or 1 degree Celsius thermal on-off deadband to a tighter 1 degree Fahrenheit 0.5 degrees Celsius thermal on-off deadband. And again, I'm not going to go through this in great detail. If you guys want to check out things in more detail, you can go to the Nav Controller playlist where I did a whole series on everything you could probably want to know about this thermostat. But for now, we're going to go ahead and save. Once we save, screen refreshes, goes back to mode 22, and now we're going to cancel out, and then we're going to be completely done in here for today. So we're going to cancel out. Screen is going to say, please stand by, we're checking the connection, and what it's really doing here is saving all the settings on the indoor board, and then after a few seconds here, it will go back to the main screen, And once it goes back to the main screen, we're done. At this point, we can move on to the next thermostat. All right, so now that you guys have an understanding for the Nav Controller, which is kind of the more common controller you're going to have on VRV systems, we're going to talk about the Madoka Controller. Now, as far as going in and changing group address, AirNet address, field settings, we're going to be doing the exact same stuff, same settings. The only difference is how do we get in? So hopefully this one won't take as long as the Nav Controller because there's even less explaining we need to do. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get into the information screen. We do this by first illuminating the backlight by pressing any of these three little buttons at the bottom, then press and hold the circle middle button for about 5 to 6 seconds, and then it will take us into the information screen. Now you have to be quick here or it will time out and escape. We're going to press and hold the circle button. While we're holding that, we're going to press and hold the plus button, and while we're holding both of those, we're going to press and hold the minus button, and then we're going to wait for like 10 seconds. It takes a while and it's very, very finicky. So let's see if it'll take us in on the first try. Like I said, it takes like 10 seconds. Hey, it worked. I've tried this like 3 times. And if you guys have watched my past Madoka videos, you know that this controller is a pain in the butt. It's a cool controller, but getting into all these settings can be a little bit difficult. So once we get into the installer settings, what we're going to do is we're going to scroll over and we're going to find our field settings, which here's our field settings, and our addresses. Here's our address setting. Again, remember before we wanted to set the addresses first. So just like before, we're going to start with the address setting, but it is a little bit more meticulous here. So you press the circle button to go in, and then we're going to actually press the circle button again, just for example, so I can show you here's where you're going to scroll through the group address and the AirNet address. So here we have group, that's going to be like group, what we just did with the Nav Controller, group unit, which we're not going to change because that has way too many group addresses by the time we get done, and then AirNet address. So first things first, we're going to select the group address. We press the circle button, go down by hitting the plus sign, and then hit the circle on enter. Now, when this populates, this is probably going to be what it looks like the first time you do it. You need to actually hit the plus button to select this empty square. If you already have a check mark on the square, that's fine, leave it there. Because what we need to do is select this square, change it to select it. When there's a check mark, that means we're using the group address. Hit the OK button to then kind of store that. Then we're allowed to go down and change the actual group address. You'll notice that if this is not checked, so let me just uncheck it again real quick, then when we go down, it actually skips the group address, so it doesn't let us change it. So we're going to check this. We're using the group address, and then we can select the group address, and now we can scroll through and set the group address. Again, we're going to set it as the same as we did before, 1-03, and then you want to go down and you want to hit set, hit the circle on set. It takes you back to the previous screen. Now we need to go back up to group, hit the circle to select group, hit the plus sign to change it to AirNet, hit the circle to select AirNet. Here's where we have our unit 0. So if we have multiple indoors, we can change it from indoor to indoor. We only have one indoor in this particular case, so we're going to leave it at unit 0. We're going to hit enter to go into AirNet address. Then we're going to scroll up. You can see the checkbox is checked. If the checkbox is not checked, make sure you check it. And then we'll be able to go down, and here's where we'll be able to go through and set our AirNet address. And you can see that I had already set it as 13. So we'll go ahead and hit set. Now that we're done, we're going to hit return, and it takes us back to this screen. Remember, we do the addresses first, because if we had done the field settings first, when we hit that return button, it actually escapes out of this menu and then stores all those settings. And you saw how long it took us to get into this menu the first time. So we're trying to make it go as quickly as possible. So now we go into the field settings. We hit the circle. Mode 20 always populates by default. We can leave it there. We're going to go down to enter, hit the circle button. Now this takes us into mode 20. Now what we need to do is we need to pick basically what setting and what option we want. So if you remember back from the Nav Controller section of this video, we had 1-01, 2-01, 3-01, or whatever, a bunch of settings. We know that we want to set 2-03. So we hit the first one, that's 2, and you can see that it actually says -03 right underneath it, and that's because we've already programmed 2-03. We're still plugged into the same exact indoor unit we were earlier. All I did was unplug my Nav Controller and plug in the Madoka. So 2-03 is what we want. We hit the circle button, but let's say we wanted to change it. After you press the circle button, let me go ahead and hit the circle button. We can go down. Here's where we can go ahead and change it if we wanted 2-02. We could set 2-02. We actually want 2-03, so hit circle. Now we go down. We want to set that address. We've now set that address. Here's where then we could go back up to mode 20. We could change it to mode 22. Hit the circle to select that. Go down to enter. Hit the circle to select that. And now you'll see the settings populate for mode 22. And in this particular case, we'd want to change the first number to go to 2 because we want 2-02. And you can see it's already set 2-02. But if for some reason it wasn't, we could select 2-02, go down, and then we could change it from 2-01 to 2-02, hit the circle to select, go down, circle on set. And now we're done with our field settings. So when we go down and we click return, it's going to escape. It's going to store all that information. So now you're going to see that it's flashing a 1. It's flashing a 1 because this is the main thermostat within my group. There's only one thermostat on the group, but in the event that you had 2 thermostats on one indoor unit, one would be 1, that'd be like your main controller, and another one would be 2. So that's the only reason it's flashing a 1. You guys can disregard that 99% of the time because we don't usually put multiple stats on one indoor unit. But I digress. Now we're done with the field settings and the addressing for the Madoka controller. So on the Daikin One Smart Thermostat, what we're basically going to do is we're going to go into the settings by clicking the top 3 lines in the corner and then clicking the settings option. We're going to scroll down to the bottom of the screen where it says dealer edit. Go ahead and click on dealer edit. It's going to give you a warning. That's fine. Go ahead and click continue. And then it's going to ask for a dealer edit code. Now, every thermostat has a different dealer code. There's a little I in the corner. Click that I, and it's going to give you the dealer code for that thermostat. In this particular case, we have a 17F3. So it is kind of hard to type in. These numbers are very small. 17. Now you can see I already screwed it up. 17F3. And then go ahead and click done. You don't need to click on lock thermostat, but you can. It doesn't really do anything different than clicking on done. The next thing you need to do is go to begin setup. Click on begin setup. The next thing you need to do is go down to equipment setup, step 3. Once you guys get to the equipment setup screen, you're basically going to be looking for 3 things. The first thing we're going to do is group address. The next thing we're going to do is Airnet address. And then we're going to actually go up and click on indoor unit to do all of our field settings, rather than clicking on load residential field settings. I do not like personally using the load residential field settings option because it loads a pre-programmed set of field settings. And as you guys know, every indoor unit has a different selection of settings that are available, and it's not every single application that we want the same settings programmed on. So I like to do these myself manually. But before we do, we need to go down to group address. We're going to click on group address. This is group or group unit. We want to actually click on assign same. And what that means is it's going to assign all the indoor units that are in this group with the same group address. Now you're going to notice that it says no group address available, but at the bottom of the screen there's a little scroll wheel. And that's because it is currently looking and loading for what the actual group address is as of right now, which you can see after a short delay, it actually says 1-02. Now it's hard to see on the camera, so let me see if I can change the angle a little bit to get you guys that 1-02. There we go. You can see now that it says 1-02. So if you guys wanted to change that from 1-00, which is the default, here's where you could go in. You could say, oh, I want to set it for whatever, 104. This is FC2 on my house, and so here I want it to say 1-02. Boy, that is a hard one to see on the camera, isn't it? There we go. That's a little bit better. 1-02. Then you're going to click on save. So we click save. It's going to think. I'm going to set you guys back up. All right, once we're done, we're going to go back. We're going to go to Airnet address. We're going to wait for it to load. And then once it loads, we can go ahead and click on it. In this case, I'm going to leave it as 12. And I'm going to go ahead and click cancel because it's already programmed. But here's where you guys could click save. So the last thing we need to do is set the field settings. So we click on the indoor unit. We go down to field settings. And then what's nice about these field settings is it's actually going to show up and give you a bunch of field settings for mode 20, where we can just click the screen, pick the settings we want, and then click on save. So here, once we've gotten to the mode 20 to display all the settings, you can see that we have all the settings on the left, all the options on the right. So we want to go in, we want to change 2-03, 5-02, and then we would normally click on save. Then we could go to mode 22, load those field settings, and then do the same thing as we've done on the other controllers where we set mode 22, 2-02, and then save. All right, once it's saved, we're gonna go ahead and go back, go back, go back, and then at the bottom, click complete setup, hit continue, and we are all done. Well, that's going to be it for today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video and found it helpful. If you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get back to all of you. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please click the like button below. It really helps out my channel. And if you haven't already and you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching Inverter always. I hope you guys all have an awesome day.